Next, we'd like to cover preventative maintenance and service on a hydraulic walk-behind machine. I'm going to start with the engine. We've discussed checking the engine oil daily. Now, how often should we change the engine oil on one of these machines? Well, a couple of things. One, it depends on how dusty it is and the temperatures. We like to give a general rule of thumb of every 25 operating hours. First, refer to your owner's manual and the type of engine oil that it's requiring. There are different viscosities, whether it be a 10W30 or a 30 weight engine oil, so you want to make sure you get the proper oil. A lot of engines today have an oil filter, so you want to make sure you replace the oil filter. This particular machine, we like to do it in 50 hours. We also have an air filter that we need to service. Now, how often do I recommend somebody service an air filter? Especially a commercial cutter in the summer months when it's dry and dusty. You'll probably need to service that air filter at least every few days. Simply remove these screws, the cover will come off, and you have an air filter right here. You're going to have one of two kinds. One is simply paper only. I recommend that you just simply tap it out till no more dust comes out of it. We do not recommend an air hose. The potential of you blowing a hole through this thin paper could possibly create a problem in the engine later on. This particular model has a foam filter. You can take this foam filter off, wash it with soap and water, let it dry, put it back on. Some manufacturers recommend a thin coat of engine oil on that filter. So once again, I'm going to say refer back to your owner's manuals because there's so many different engine combinations and manufacturers. We want to make sure that we meet those requirements for that engine to be properly serviced. These engines also have a fuel filter on them, just like your car. This one is located right here, and they are directional fuel filters. They have an arrow. We usually say somewhere around 250 hours or every 6 months is how that should be done. And the last service tip I can give you on an engine is these cooling fins right here is actually what cools the engine. And when you find a commercial cutter that is mowing lots of grass in heavy environments, this is going to become clogged with grass and dust. So how do you clean that? If you have access to an air hose, you want to blow it out real nice. If you don't, get out the garden hose, rinse it out real good. After you've done that, I recommend that you crank it up, let it run 4 or 5 minutes to get all the water off the engine, and let it sit in the sun and dry. The next thing that I want to cover is the hydraulic service, which is right over here. We actually recommend that you check the hydraulic oil maybe every 100 hours. And for a landscape contractor, that's generally about every 3 months. The less you open this, the less chance you're going to have contamination in there. It has a high and a low mark, just like a dipstick on the lawnmower or your car. The thing that I would recommend that you take into consideration is refer back to your owner's manual and get the proper hydraulic fluid that goes in the machine. There are many different types of fluids, and when you start blending hydraulic fluid, you're going to create overheating problems and hydraulic pump failures. So please make sure that we use the right fluid. Now, unless you see a hydraulic leak on a hydraulic mower, I probably would only check the oil, hydraulic oil, about every 3 months, and then they also have a hydraulic filter. Now, these filters are basically hidden. On this model, it is up underneath the frame, and we recommend that you change the hydraulic filter about every 400 or 500 hours or once a year. This is going to cover most of the hydraulic service that you would need to perform on any manufacturer. The last thing we're going to cover is the deck. Whenever you're ready to service the deck on your commercial mid-size mower, a couple things that we recommend. Daily, remove this cover. It has a couple of simple screws. Get your backpack blower and blow all the grass clippings off. We see more belt failures from decks that are clogged with grass than anything. So to help to reduce your expense and to ensure your performance, at the end of the day, blow the deck off. The next thing I would like to talk to you about is the spindles. This particular machine is a 48-inch cut, and it has 3 spindles. Some manufacturers have grease fittings on them and some don't. Generally, the ones that have grease fittings on the top of the spindle we like to see you grease it every 25 hours. A good rule of thumb is about once a week. Now, when greasing those fittings, we recommend generally 2 or 3 pumps from a grease gun and not over greasing it, because that's when you create problems. The last thing I'd like to talk to you about as far as the deck is blade sharpening. For a contractor, generally you're probably going to sharpen them every day. When you sharpen them, several passes with the grinder on one side, several passes with the other. Invest in a simple blade balancer. They're less than $10. Make sure it's in balance. If for some reason when you're balancing this blade and it drops down, that means that the blade is too heavy on this end. So you would need to grind more off this side, and then you would put it back on your balancer and the blade would find perfect balance. And that's what you're looking for. How do you know when it's out of balance? Generally, you're going to feel a lot of vibration in your hands, or you're going to see the deck shake a lot when the blades are out of balance. When you're reinstalling the blades, make sure that you torque those to the proper specifications in your owner's manual. Usually they're going to have some type of foot-pound ratings that you use with a torque wrench or an impact. The last thing on servicing a commercial midsize is generally we're going to have some type of grease fitting up here on the caster wheel, one on the front wheel, and maybe 1 or 2 in the back. And that should cover most everything that you're going to need to perform service on a midsize.